Sonic the Hedgehog is no stranger to racing games. It's kind of hard to avoid when you're the fastest thing alive. However, despite that, most of them aren't talked about nearly as much or are as high regarded as other platform mascots racing endeavors. And hey, with a new Sonic racing game on the way, it gives me a good excuse to see what these games are all about, and see how they fare in comparison to one another. So, with that being said, oh hell yeah. What, we have to cover this one, it's only right. This is Sonic Drift, released for the Game Gear, Sega's alternative to the Game Boy, now with color, so you don't have to knock yourself unconscious with a dead scroll just to see it. It's your basic kart racing affair that Super Mario Kart had popularized. You pick a character, although in this case there's only 4, Sonic, Tails, Amy, and Eggman. You pick a track and outrace your others to ensure victory. You're given the choice of competing in 3 total Grand Prix, so let's just start out with the first one. All the tracks here are based off the zones from Sonic 1, however outside of the backgrounds they all kind of feel the same. I can see why it's called Sonic Drift, otherwise you're driving down completely flat lanes with nothing on them except for the occasional monitors, which even then only gives you 2 things. The red ones give you boosts and the blue ones give you invincibility, which also cuts off all the music to play this ear-grating loop. You can't even decide when to use these items since they activate automatically once you hit them. And on top of that, the main mechanic of the game, the drifting, sucks too. The game's visuals make it extremely hard to see what's up ahead, and of course out of all the things they decided to copy from Super Mario Kart, they copied the split screen view. On a handheld too, so the screen's already small. You're constantly staring at the map to see when turns are coming up, and even then it still feels like a crapshoot if you make the turn or not. It's just really not fun. Well, whatever, we got the first cup out of the way, and on to the next one. Wait. This is Green Hill again. Ay Dios míos. Yes, every cup has the same tracks just with different layouts. They're still boring, flat, nothing burgers, just now slightly different. It's the worst form of padding, and you get nothing out of it aside from these ending cutscenes, which I only got because I wanted to see Sonic's power strut here. And what the hell are these faces? Whatever, this game sucks. On to the next one. Oh god damn it! This is Sonic Drift 2, because I guess Drift 1 just did so well that they felt the need to make a sequel. And it was also the first one to be released internationally. Yeah, Drift 1 was Japanese exclusive, yet they still felt the need to name this Drift 2 nonetheless. Drift 2 has a couple new characters including Knuckles, Metal Sonic, and Fang. Okay, I guess we're really pressed for options. There's 3 total Grand Prix like the first game, however to give Drift 2 some credit, it actually has unique tracks for each cup. And they're not all boring this time. They're mostly just flat plains like before, but tracks like Emerald Hill have these off-road sand sections that you have to avoid, Desert Road has half pipes on the sides, and Rainy Savannah is insistent on giving you a fucking seizure. It's not much, but it gives the tracks some variety. The gameplay's still the same, as in not good. However, the game in general is way harder with more advanced AI, stage hazards, and the aforementioned seizures. Completing every cup doesn't really get you anything. Hell, you don't even get the ending cutscenes from Drift 1, which kinda sucks. Still, despite Drift 2 being a much better game than the first, it's still Sonic Drift. It suffers from a lot of the inherent problems the first game had, and really both of these games are just not that good. Sonic R is primarily known for 2 things, having an unreasonably hard soundtrack and whatever the hell this thing is. Originally released on the Sega Saturn during the whole 3D gaming craze of the mid-90s, Sonic R was one of the many spin-offs that released to correspond with what was planned to be Sonic's mainline 3D debut, Sonic Extreme. However, that never ended up being released, so the Saturn era basically consisted of its main Sonic titles being a port of Sonic 3D Blast and this game. Either way, Sonic R was eventually packaged as part of the Sonic Gems collection, which I'm guessing a lot of people first experienced it. And I mean, it's fine I guess. It sets itself apart from Drift by actually having the characters race on foot. Except for Amy and Eggman, those lazy fucks. They all have their own different stats and abilities to use, such as Tails' signature flight or Knuckles' gliding. And because the game's in 3D, there's obviously much more freedom to your movement. The levels aren't just flat plains anymore, they actually have elevation and alternate paths and whatnot. And all the characters have these really low body models, which are admittedly kinda charming even if they do look pretty dumb. The game's controls, however, aren't really the best. Basically, you have an accelerate button that makes the characters move forward, while the control stick is strictly for steering. There's a jump button, you can make sharp turns with the left and right bumpers. However, there's no brake button, so if you want to stop, you kind of just have to wait for the characters to do it on their own. Now you might be wondering why you'd ever stop in a racing game, but that's where Sonic R's whole structure comes in. It's unique in the sense that it's a racing game that actually incentivizes exploration of all things. You start off with just 4 characters, but the rest have to be unlocked, and the way you do that is by collecting the 5 coins scattered about through each level. Some of them will be locked behind these doors that require a certain amount of rings, and after getting them all, you'll be able to race the character to unlock them. Most of them are just robot versions of their real counterparts, which is as weird as it is lame. And there's also Chaos Emeralds that when collected unlock Super Sonic, who is the best character in the game by far. You do have to finish the race in first place for the collectibles to count though, which is hard sometimes when they're put in the most out of the way places. Either way, it does give this game its own identity, for better or for worse. It's really the most you're getting out of this game because there's only 5 tracks. Not cups, tracks. You can't even play all the tracks in like a sort of Grand Prix or anything. I guess Drift does have something better after all. But yeah, that's really my main issue with this game. There's just really not much to do besides unlocking all the characters, and once you do, there's really no incentive to keep playing after. Unless you want to cruise through all the levels easily as Super Sonic. Hey, I'm not gonna judge you. Sonic Riders, arguably the only good thing to come out of Sonic's 15th anniversary. It's probably the series people's minds go to when they think about Sonic racing games, and I can't blame them. I mean, it hits you right in the face with this beautiful and stylish as hell intro. Really, this whole game feels like the developers were thinking, what would a Trovio think is the coolest thing in the world? Anthropomorphic characters racing on hoverboards through futuristic landscapes? Nah, sure, why not? They even gave the characters these redesigns just for the sake of looking cool. And I mean, they do look cool. Basically, the gist of this game is that you're racing on these hoverboards called Extreme Gear. There's 16 tracks, so already more content than R had. And there's also way more characters to choose from, including some Sega cameos like Ai and Knights. Foreshadowing. They even have a story mode for as much as that means in a racing game. Basically, this ancient civilization known as the Babylonians were a legendary band of thieves who were really technologically advanced and supposedly left behind a great treasure in the ruins of the Babylon Garden. Eggman wants the treasure for himself, but he needs the Chaos Emeralds as well as the key to Babylon, being held by the descendants of the Babylonians, the Babylon Rogues, consisting of Jet the Hawk, Wave the Swaddle, and Storm the Albatross. So he sets up this World Grand Prix requiring Chaos Emeralds as an entrance fee.
Not just a race, but a special race to see who's the fastest!
Which Team Sonic enters because of an earlier encounter with the Babylon Rogues. And just when Sonic's about to win the whole thing, his board gets sabotaged, allowing Jet to win and summon Babylon Garden, and after being this genie-looking thing, it's revealed that the treasure was just a carpet. I mean, it's technically the prototype to the Extreme Gear, but it's still kinda useless. Completing the story mode is how you unlock most of the characters and stages, assuming you can beat it, because holy shit, this mode is hard. The earlier stuff isn't too bad, but by the time you get to the Babylon story, you basically have to play perfectly to win. The AI is just so unforgiving. Unless you aren't taking every shortcut possible, you are not winning these. It's probably the hardest racing game I've ever played, and I've played F-Zero. Maybe it's just a skill issue, but god damn. And it's a shame since the tracks are actually pretty fun for the most part, but story mode basically just kills all my enjoyment for it. Part of the reason why this game is so hard is that it just overwhelms you with so many mechanics. I mean, where do I start? Okay, so your Extreme Gear runs on air, represented by the bar on the right. You can increase it by collecting rings, however the only way to refill it is either by performing tricks, getting refills from castles, or by using these pit stops. How something that runs on air can run out is beyond me. When performing tricks, you have to make sure that you land correctly, otherwise you'll slow down, and you can also trick higher if you hold the jump in before launching off a ramp. Each character is categorized into a speed, fly, and power class, and are able to interact with different objects like grind rails or barriers to take their own unique shortcuts. There's this electric barrier at the start of races that will deactivate after the countdown. If you run through it at the right time, you'll get a speed boost. You can ride turbulence trails left behind other racers to perform tricks and refill your air meter. You can drift to make sharp turns. There's these automatic trails which you can get through faster by rotating the joystick quickly. Just so much shit that the game throws at you, and they expect you to learn it all because you aren't beating story mode otherwise. And beating it is how you unlock most of the content in the game. I don't think they're bad mechanics by any means, they're just so unintuitive that it ultimately makes the game more frustrating than it should be. Still, Sonic Riders is fun. I don't want to make it seem like it isn't. It's definitely the best out of the games we've covered so far. It's just a shame that getting to that point of enjoying it requires you to learn so many confusing mechanics and pushing yourself through the bullshit that is story mode. But I'll stop complaining for now. Let's just see how the sequel fares in comparison. Zero Gravity seems to get a lot of mixed reception as both a game and a sequel. It is largely similar to the first Riders, however a lot of its gameplay elements have been simplified. Like how tricks now just focus on when you press the button instead of actually landing correctly. The air meter's been removed, and instead rings give you upgrades to your extreme gear like increased max speed and increased gravity meter, which is essentially the air meter's replacement. With it, you can perform drifts and this gravity dive maneuver, which... Things like turbulence trails and automatic sections have been removed, however it adds a lot of unique gameplay gimmicks centered around the anti-gravity, so it's simultaneously more and less intuitive than the first Riders. There's a story mode like before, however it's much easier, and it's actually a tutorial, thank god. I appreciate the things Zero Gravity tries to add to the formula, however I still find myself preferring the first Riders. I don't know, maybe it's just a personal preference thing.
But Quasilo, what about Free Riders? What about it?
Sonic Rivals is indeed one of the games of all time. Released on the PSP of all systems, and is also like one of the only relevant Sonic things on that entire system. The best way I can describe it is essentially if you took the competition mode from Sonic 3 and made an entire game around that. The whole game is in 2D and you're racing throughout different zone layouts trying to beat your opponent. You can trick off with certain objects either horizontally or vertically, or you can attack your opponents with a variety of items or by using this tackle move. Being on the PSP, the game looks alright. Not bad necessarily, but very low res, so it doesn't really look the best blown up. The controls are pretty standard since you're just running and jumping for the most part, which is fine, I mean that's how classic Sonic controls. But there's no real momentum to anything, you're kinda just running at a fixed speed for most of it. The music's solid, albeit forgettable. And I don't know, Sonic Rivals is kinda one of those games that exists. I really wish I had more to say about it, but it just doesn't leave that much of an impression. It miraculously got a sequel somehow, but it's just kinda more of the same, just with more characters now, including Espio for some reason. Who invited him? Really the only thing I remember it is this song. Sounds like something you'd hear in Tony Hawk. Maybe I should cover that series someday. And now onto the most recent, and probably most relevant series given Sonic Racing Crossroads announcement, the Sega All-Star series, which is kinda misleading since Team Sonic Racing only has Sonic characters. Starting off with the first game, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, released for the Wii, PS3, Xbox 360, and the DS. Oh god. The series definitely gives off the most Mario Kart vibes out of all of them. I mean, you're racing 8 other opponents through different tracks that are actually interesting. Using items gained from item boxes. You can charge your drift to gain speed boosts, it's all basic stuff. The game's real main appeal is, if you couldn't tell from the title, the fan service. Because believe it or not, Sega has made other series besides Sonic the Hedgehog. You have characters like I from Super Monkey Ball, Beat from Jet Set Radio, Oodala from Space Channel 5, Alex Kidd wanting to get his revenge on Sonic for taking his mascot spot, Banjo's in the 360 version, and I guess that was so important that they felt the need to add it to the title of the game. And all the courses are based on locations from their respective series. Gameplay wise, the game is really smooth and very intuitive. All the courses are fairly well designed, and the game still looks rather decent for a 7th gen title. There's not really much negative I can comment about, it's just a solid kart racer with tons of fan service that any fan of Sega is bound to enjoy. Although I don't really think there's a reason to when its sequel exists, Sonic and All-Star Racing Transformed. You may have noticed that they dropped the Sega from the title, and that's because this game decided to add whoever the hell it felt like that day. Transformed at its core is just the first game, but improved upon in many aspects, such as the presentation, controls, music, etc. However, the game is clearly centered around its transformation gimmick. Basically, think of Diddy Kong Racing, how you could choose between a car, a plane, or a hovercraft, but instead of doing the entire race with those vehicles, the vehicle you use changes in mid-race depending on the level layout, which is constantly changing throughout the 3 laps. You never know what to expect, and it doesn't help that all 3 forms control the exact same, so you're not forced to learn an entirely new gameplay style on the spot. It's honestly one of the coolest gimmicks I've seen in a kart racer. Like before, there's tons of fan service that any longtime Sega fan is bound to enjoy. And yeah, it's pretty good. If there is one complaint I have though, is that most of the tracks in this game go on for way too long. Like we're talking 4 to 5 minutes on average. It's like if every track in this game had the same length as N64 Rainbow Road. Granted, they're much more interesting, but the point still stands. But either way, that brings us to the most recent entry at the time of recording, or at least until Crossroads comes out. and not including that Apple Arcade exclusive thing. Team Sonic Racing, completely forgoing all of the Sega cameos in favor of just sticking with Sonic, which is a shame, but it's really whatever. Team Sonic Racing still keeps the same general gameplay as before, however unfortunately it got rid of the transformation gimmick. However, it makes up for it with its namesake, its team-based gameplay. And basically, instead of trying to get first place, you're trying to get your overall team a good ranking throughout the entire course of the cup. You can send or request unwanted items from teammates, trail behind them for speed boosts, and once you get enough of these start points, you can perform a team ultimate which gives you a ton of speed and makes you completely invisible throughout it. It's a unique way of approaching a kart racer, and I find it kind of fun. And hey, if you don't want it, you can always just not use it, but that's just a matter of taste. There's a story mode in this one, and completing certain missions will unlock you cosmetics for your vehicles. The game undoubtedly looks the best, and it also has a really good soundtrack. Seriously, listen to it when you got the chance. While I prefer Transform's unique gameplay mechanics, I still find myself slightly preferring Team Sonic Racing overall. And hey, if Crossers is anything like it, I think we're in for a good time. But those are all of the Sonic Racing games released so far. At least officially. There are some really cool fan projects I wanted to talk about in this video, but I might save them for another time. It was interesting looking back at these games. We had some good, we had some bad, we had some kinda weird, but one thing we didn't have was no motion controls, because I'm not playing Sonic Free Riders because that game fucking sucks and